Welcome back, folks. It's almost 5 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock, and on set with me is Professor Peter Baofu. Professor Baofu is an author of 126 scholarly books, as well as numerous articles to provide a visionary challenge to conventional wisdom in all fields of knowledge. He is here to share his perspectives with us on Morning Edition. Welcome, sir.
Good morning.
Great to have you here. Let us begin by talking about the underlying trends that are transforming the world in which we live. Maybe we can begin with the whole issue of education, how knowledge is passed from one generation to the next, and how successive generations are using knowledge to empower themselves in order to make the world a better place. Do you think that with the use of technology, it has become a lot easier, a lot cheaper to pass on knowledge? And are we as a nation making the best use of technology in order to transmit knowledge from one generation to the next?
It depends what do you mean by we here. We means whom. But the question that you asked is a good question in terms of the value of education and knowledge, especially with the use of internet, as you just mentioned. But I think that it's just like everything in life is good and bad. Even the use of the internet is good and bad too. Many of the information on the internet, it depends on how you use that and what you find. It can be good, it can be bad. It's true for everything. So don't imagine that the internet is good for education. It can be good for education. It can be very bad for education. You spend all your time on the internet. Many of the information that you find may not be as accurate or valuable as some other educational sources that you may have conventionally. Mm-hmm. So this is true about everything in life. Mm-hmm. So don't just assume that the internet must be good. There are a lot of problems on the internet nowadays.
Yeah.
Misinformation. It's just like information now is used in a different way, in a more high-tech way.
Yeah.
But you can use it in a high-tech way for criminal, for misinformation, for propaganda, for many other reasons.
Yes.
So there's no internal, inherent nature that somehow the internet is good. No, it's good and bad.
Well, let's talk about it from the perspective, and we're talking about education now. Let's talk about it from the perspective of creating the virtual classroom. Mm-hmm. And in so doing, because for many countries, providing good quality education is very expensive. A lot of infrastructure is involved in developing the spaces for people to occupy and to be taught in those spaces. Can the internet be used as an effective tool to make it cheaper, to reach people? So instead of people coming to a particular place to be educated, the knowledge goes to them on a screen. The instructor is on their screen, and so on. Is that model a much more effective way to reach young people in particular? And we can talk about retraining older persons later on. But is that an effective way, so at the primary level, at the secondary level, where you can better transmit knowledge to a particular segment of the population, but at a much lower cost?
In economics, we can talk about economics of education. Everything has a cost and a benefit. You get what you pay for. You want to something cheap? Fine. Remember, the quality that you get may be lower than something a bit more expensive. Let me give you one example. I got my PhD from MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Now, many years ago, MIT proposed open courseware. Nowadays, you don't need to go to MIT. You go to the internet, you can listen to, watch all the courses going on at MIT right now. Yes. Instant, online. You can even send in some questions, and the professor may answer your question internationally. You do not pay. Isn't that amazing? At that time when it was proposed, a lot of schools said, well, maybe we should not do that because we are going to lose a lot of money that way.
Yeah.
Well, it turns out not so quick. Number one, the education that you get is not necessarily MIT education. You are isolated most of the time. You are by yourself in your room. You are not interacting with the professor and the students and all the institutions as MIT.
Yes.
Okay. You may be from India or from Africa or from Togo, wherever you are. You are in a classroom. Occasionally you log in. You may have some interaction, but you are not getting the first-rate education. If you are smart, you may understand some of the materials.
Yes.
You might even get accepted into MIT later on and say, well, I took this course, I did that well, and you should accept it. Okay, fine.
Yes.
But for one person who is successful, you might have 99.999% of them who fail, who couldn't even understand what is going on.
Right.
So to get something cheap, remember, you pay a high price. Just like you rent a room or an apartment. It's very cheap, fine. But remember, the quality of the room, the apartment, the house is not that good.
Right. But if
So you pay for it.
Okay, so I take the argument with regard to tertiary level education. Now, if you were to step back and go back down the ladder, secondary, primary education. Now, for some countries, many developing countries around the world, it may be a case of at least getting this level of interaction online as opposed to nothing at all. Don't you think that based on the evolution of the internet, and some countries have been launching 5G networks and so on, do you think that that at least offers some opportunity for persons who may not have ordinarily received a primary level education or a secondary level education, that the internet does provide at least an opportunity for that to happen?
Remember, in economic analysis, I say that again, cost and benefit. It's never the question, either you do it or you do not do that at all. No, this kind of thinking is very extreme, polarizing thinking. In reality, people do that all the time. It just depends on how you do it, in what way.
Yeah.
And what is your agenda?
Yeah.
What is the outcome that you want?
Yes.
How much do you want to pay for? And what are the benefits that you want to get? This kind of question, when you boil down to that, things is relative.
Yes.
You go to A, that's how they do it. You go to B, that's how they do that. So the question is not, should we use the internet or should we totally ban the internet? No, this is the wrong question to ask. Just nowadays, the top of 5G. Some years later, there may be 6G, 7G, 8G. A lot of countries will jump in. Some of the poor countries in Africa, they may never have gone into the same stages of evolution. Now, some of them are even talking about 5G without going through 1, 2, 3, 4, something like that. You can do that too, but remember what I said. There is an economic analysis over here. If you choose one, you do not do the other ones, and that's a cost.
The opportunity cost.
Oh, yes. Tremendous.
Yes.
So you have to think about that. Oh, let me give you another analogy. In some Africa nowadays, there are some Western NGOs. They go to Africa. They introduce some kind of new way to use water. They ask them to buy some kind of equipment in the village so that can help them to have clean water. Now, when they brought the machines in, number one, who is going to pay for this? The machine. And then you have to repair the machine. Then who is going to take care of the machine? Now, by the time you go through the list of the things that you need to do, it costs money. And then who are the people who lose their job because of you now? Before you had some people, they have a job. You want some water, I will bring the water for you. You pay me a little bit. I go to the well, go to this, I bring the water, carry in the header, do some other things. Now they lose their job. Now their job is not needed.
Yeah.
So this is called the sociology of whatever you do. So
Well,
this is the thing that we need to consider. The question is not should we not. That is relative to the cost-benefit analysis.
Yes, I hear you. So, Professor Baofu, we're going to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about the future of work. Because one of the things that intrigued me a lot is the whole question of automation, and now automation moving into individual robotics and so on. Let's talk about the future of work, these underlying trends, and of course how they will impact countries like ours. Okay, folks, we're going to take a very quick break, and when we return, we'll continue with this very important conversation. Welcome back, folks. It's 18 minutes past the hour of 7 o'clock, and we're having a very interesting conversation with Professor Baofu. He is an American author and visionary. Continue our discussion regarding the issue of the future of work. And there's been a lot of conversation about robotics and how robotics technology has evolved, and you now have images of these robots doing menial tasks and so on. Artificial intelligence and how that too can influence some of the higher value-added type work activities. Do you see displacement happening across countries in terms of their labor force as this new technology becomes more commercialized?
To answer very quickly, number one, the answer is yes, in certain countries, especially in the more advanced countries. The reason for that is because of the comparative advantage of different economies. There are some countries that are much more capital intensive, and there are some countries that are much more labor intensive. So when you have much more capital intensive over time, the chance is the economy become more automated over time. For those economies which are much less capital intensive, much more labor intensive, that process is not as much. Now, second question is that good or bad? Because when you ask questions like that, often people assume that that's bad, you lose job. No, I think that can be very good news for the economy. Think about this. Many years ago, people used to hunt and gather, hunting and gathering. Nowadays, we don't have too many hunters and gatherers. Maybe there are some, not many, less than 1% of the human population. Now, many years before, you have a lot of people, they spend their time on growing crops on land as part of agriculture. Nowadays, in many economies, especially those who are industrial, now post-industrial economies, the agricultural labor force become very small. So should you be sitting here and cry and say, oh, it's very bad, we don't have any more hunters, we don't have any more gatherers, we don't have any more farmers and all that? No, the economy become much more advanced, progressive. In my publication, I even predict that in the future, the economy become much more space-oriented, in the sense that space exploration and colonization in the future will become another frontier, and it's not now. And at that time, you will not see too many people working in all these previous sectors that we have nowadays. So it's not necessarily bad, it's not necessarily good. It depends. If you are the person who loses the job because of automation, that can be bad for you. But on the other hand, it can be a wonderful news for you, because now you can move to another career, another thing that you want to do. Returning can be a good opportunity for you to earn something more. Maybe you hate the job that you had before. Now there's a good opportunity for you to have some new education, new skill and all that, so you can do something else. It's not necessarily bad, but it's not necessarily good. It depends on who you are, which economy you are in, and all that.
You see, the challenge that many people will look at is the transition. So if I know I'm working in a factory, a manufacturing facility, and they're going to invest further in technology, in equipment and so on, that will really make my job redundant, then how do I, as an employee, look to retrain? Many companies may not even offer the opportunity for retraining and further placement in other jobs. So you, as the employee, based on the law of the land, you may receive some basic payoff, and then you're out of a job. What people are concerned about is, well, if I have to retrain myself, what are some of the industries, what are some of the skills that will make me once again marketable in this 21st century?
There are several answers. The first answer is what you talk about from the individual standpoint. that is not value neutral. It's based on an economic ideology. If you are on the left, you believe that the state, the government should step in and help. If you are on the right, they think that it's the market, the economy, the laissez-faire economics, which should be the central focus, which means that if you're on the right, you should say something like this, that it's the individual. You must be responsible for your own life, for your own choice. You cannot just depend on other people to come in and do things for you. When you have a problem, you choose the job that you had. So if something happened, you should plan for it. Okay, if you think that, for example, your job may not be needed soon or in the future, you should plan certain things. Don't just expect other people to come in and do everything for you. But if you're on the left, on the other hand, if you work for the labor unions, for example, you might say that, well, the government, the labor unions, and all these organizations should come in and do everything for you.
But you know, Professor, you'll agree that sometimes there are unforeseen circumstances. We call them black swan events.
Yes.
And you can't plan for those things. So
you cannot plan, but in economics, we also say that a lot of people, they should set aside some emergency fund for something happen. You may get sick too, by the way. Many of us, we do get sick from time to time, unforeseen. So a lot of people do prepare for that. We get sick, at least something is going to set aside. The person may not work the next day, or on that day, the person can still take care of himself or herself. So, by the same logic, you may get married too, unforeseen. You may fall in love with someone. You may have an accident tomorrow. Or you may win a lottery tomorrow. Why always on the negative side?
But you see, Professor, many people can manage those risks via insurance. So you can have health insurance. You can have car insurance for your accidents or whatever. The point I'm making is, if you were to point someone in the right direction in terms of, well, you know what, these are the skills that you should possess. Technical skills, soft skills, these are the skills that you ought to possess in this 21st century era. What would you tell them? What are these skills?
No, there's no such a universal answer to everyone. I don't think that the question that you ask is correctly put. You say, how can you tell people that this is what you should do? This is the skill that what you should have. I think that this kind of question is extremely value-laden because it depends, again, on your ideology and your value judgment. So one person may say this to you, another person may say something else to you. It's just like there are some major powers. They come in and tell other people, do this, do this, do this. If you don't do this, we are going to do this and this against you. But there are some other powers. They say, well, that's not my business to ask you what to do. You have to make up your mind. You do whatever you like. And so far, you do not hurt me. I do not hurt you. That's fine. You see, it's value judgment. How are you? What should I say to you? That you should do this, this, and this. You should have this skill. You should not have this skill. Who am I to tell you about this? It's you. I can give you some proposals. Maybe based on what I know about you, I think that you are good in A, B, C, and D. But which one you choose, how do you do it, I think you have to make up your mind. Or I can come in and behave like your fatherly figure and say, do this, do this, do this. There are some people that are dictators. They behave like that. Yeah. Now, maybe you want someone to dictate to you, but other people may not want otherwise. So my answer is there's no universal answer to the question because it's a value judgment question.
Professor, it's been great talking to you. This is a very exciting conversation. I hope that we can continue this conversation very soon again. And let's talk about the future of work. Let's talk about some of the industries that are evolving and so on. But we're totally out of time, but I want to thank you for making it here this morning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very much. Okay.
Great having you. Okay, folks, there's still more on this scintillating agenda. Don't go anywhere.